To this community, thanks to our sponsors. Join me in thanking our 2020 Denver Startup Week sponsors, our title sponsors, Downtown Denver Partnership, JP Morgan Chase, Prologis, and Zero. Our track sponsors who have made all the great content you're hearing today possible. Battery 621 and the Public Works, Capital One Cafe, Colorado Lending Source, Friday Health, Quizlet, Exactly, Zayo, and Zestful. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement this week. Thank you to Wix, Kenzen, MAPR Agency, Obsidian HR, Kickstart Fund, Promontory Mortgage, Molson Coors, and Comcast. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our virtual Denver Startup Week, and don't forget to use hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experience and moments of inspiration on social media.
Hey everybody, it's Ben Higgins here. I am a proud Denver resident. I have been for the last 8 years, and I love Denver. I've called it home for the last 8 years because I love the people, I love the creativity, I love the activity, and I love where the city is going. But I also get the privilege of welcoming all of you to Denver Startup Week's Product Track session, brought to you by the one and only Capital One. Was a small business owner myself. I have a few restaurants and a few businesses there in Denver, actually. I'm proud to partner with Capital One to celebrate all things entrepreneurship, especially during these unprecedented times. So, for all of you out there, enjoy this session. And I look forward to connecting with all of you very soon.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Denver Startup Week. We are so glad you're here today. My name is Kylie, and I'm the Product Track co-chair and a member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you so much for joining us for our first ever virtual Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make sure all of our sessions are a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow. Before we kick off, like our video said, I just want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, especially our Product Track sponsor, Capital One. We really appreciate all they do to support us in helping to keep Denver Startup Week free and accessible for all. We are just thrilled that you have joined us for our session on Wargames and product strategy today. We're so glad that you're here, and I know that our speaker, Adam Thomas, has a lot of wisdom to share with us today. So as we go throughout the presentation, be sure to add your questions into the chat. Adam is here live, and after we watch a video presentation directly from him, we're going to have an opportunity to go into live Q&A. So be sure to use the chat function to add your questions. Here we go.
Hello, welcome to this talk here at Denver Startup Week. And I hope you've been having quite a time with all the wonderful talks here on the product track and the other tracks that exist. This is a great opportunity to learn and connect with folks. On that note, let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility. This is something that's very important to me, especially as a Black man here in America. I think one of the things that we miss out on if we continue to talk amongst ourselves is the opportunity to get to know someone else and to see the world through their lens. Buckminster Fuller said, the world or the universe is apprehended non-simultaneously, meaning we all see a little something different in it. So what I hope in this conversation, in this time, that you'll be able to take the time to talk to somebody that doesn't identify the same way as you do. It's an opportunity to see the world a little differently and become a better person. With that said, Wargames as product, strategy, praxis. Let's get right to it. Start with the truth. Product strategy is hard. As it fits between mission and vision and the objectives and goals of a company, it's a middle ground that has to take into consideration both things that are happening around it as well as the world outside. And as the owner, as a founder or product manager, watching this, you have to manage three things. You have to manage the external constraints that you'll run into. Let's call these rules. You'll have to run into the internal goals that you'll need to hit. Let's call these bets. And then the acceptable amount of effort based on the impact of your product strategy. Let's call this resource allocation. Then you got to ask yourself, how do you practice these things? All three of these lenses are happening at all times. And to practice a product strategy by building product strategy is incredibly dangerous. You need to have a way to train yourself on how to become a better strategist. And how do you simulate those things? How do you simulate those lenses? Well, there are probably plenty of ways. The way I like to do it is through gaming, more specifically, wargaming. If you don't know what wargaming is a strategy type of game which deals with military operations of various types, real or fictional. And wargaming is just a hobby dedicated to that. Through wargaming, through that simulation, you'll get a chance to figure things out. You'll be pushing lead, as they say. Right? And the lead means nothing. You'll be able to work through things on a tactical level, on a battle sense, and on a strategic level, campaign sense. You'll be able to work through the rules that you're providing. You'll be able to make bets with other people, simulating the opportunities that you have around you. And then you'll have a limited amount of resources to get them done. So I find it to be a fantastic way to try this, to understand strategy. Now, I have to start off with a little bit of a disclaimer. Great strategy does not mean great execution. And great strategy does not mean success. No matter how impressive your strategy, it's not guaranteed. However, like wargaming, the right concepts can help any product manager increase their chance of success. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time together, so we're not going to do a primer on wargaming itself. I'll have some resources for you to look at later that'll help you get into the habit and the hobby. It's wonderful, and it's a great way to let off some steam and roll some dice and have some fun. But today, we're going to focus directly on the three things I mentioned earlier and how that can make you a better product strategist. Who am I? Hi, I'm Adam. I am the principal at Approaching One. And what we do at Approaching One is we help product leaders make the transition from a product manager to a product leader. One of the things that transition requires is an understanding of product strategy. We also help founders figure out how to make that first product hire, because that first hire is going to change and set up what product means in your organization for quite some time. We help, so if you have any questions around that, feel free to email me at adam@theadamthomas.com. Say hi. Me, I've spent about 10 years, I've been over 10 years working in product strategy as a founder, a product manager, and a product exec. And as a wargamer, I've been doing this for a very long time, for 25 years. I was a kid rolling dice. So for those with kids, it's a great hobby to just even jump in with them. You'll often be surprised, as my father was, at some of the things that you do, that kids will do to get victory. So jump in. We started with rules. Let's talk about rules. When you're wargaming, you're often handed a play set or a play sheet that has all the rules in it. These are external factors that create the context that you'll be playing in. These are unchangeable, and they bring order to whatever you plan on doing. Now, it's critical that you understand the rules because there's often a game master. Right? And the game master serves two functions. One, as a kind of a disembodied spirit to understand and get in front of people whenever they break the rules. And two, They also exist to give or create implicit rules to make the scenario more playable. Gotta know the game master, gotta know the rule set. That'll help you craft your strategy for victory. Same thing in product strategy. These rules, in our case, are these external forces that set up the context of your world. They come from the market, they come from customers, they come from the area in which you're doing the product. There are all types of things, all types of rules that exist that you have no control over. One of the things that's important to note here, much like the wargaming scenario I talked about before, rules are both implicit and explicit. You're going to need to understand the implicit rules and research to find and understand the explicit rules. Let me a note on implicit rules. Implicit rules often only make themselves known when you engage, right? When you talk to customers, when you talk to your competitors, when you try to understand the business or the market. These implicit rules will start hitting you in the face pretty much. So it's critical before you launch a strategy or as you're building a strategy, you're sending off these little flares trying to understand the rules that are implicit in your business. Because breaking rules have consequences, even if they're implicit. Granted, there's no game master in the sky trying to figure this out for you or enforcing these things. The market itself generally will throw things back in your face if you break those rules, even if you don't know what they are, right? Ignorance is no defense for the law. That said, you can't let the rules dictate your strategy. It's important to understand what they are. It's important to interact with them, but they do not make the strategy itself, right? You have to take them into consideration as you build your strategy, or else you can fall into a couple of traps, like really focusing on the micro, or being seen as unwitting by your competitors and having them use that against you. Now, there are things that are going to happen that are just, there's going to be attrition, usually, through the things that you do, right? In whatever field that you have. Understanding those rules help you bake in that attrition into your strategy itself, making it far more comfortable for you to use that strategy whenever something wrong happens. When you don't, you start wondering about tiny things, right? In a war game sense, that means you might freak out about a morale roll or a particular shot. You shouldn't do that unless your back is against the wall. In that case, there is no strategy, right? It's survival. Same thing goes with product strategy. If you're worried about a stakeholder or if you're worried about a customer type and you haven't considered it, right, your back is against the wall. And there's no need for strategy then. It's just trying to survive, right? You should have that expected failure rate baked into whatever strategy you have. So let's remember these things about rules. It's your job to understand these rules, both the implicit and explicit. So in war games, that's reading the rule set and interacting with the game master. In product, that's done with research and customer interaction. That's what you're looking at here is a game in which I'm trying to take over this city here. I'm making a couple of bets with the teammates that I have that are surrounding this table. You can't see them. But I have teammates, and we're all trying to take this little city here. And in order to take that city, we need to talk to each other. We need to come up with a couple of bets that we all want to make. We need to get some of the thoughts that are in our head, some of the things that we're really thinking about out together so that they coordinate with each other. And then we ultimately need to execute on those things while keeping each other aware of the situation so that we're able to keep the strategy cohesive. We do the same thing with product strategy. Our product strategy is often a series of bets. In your case, you're not playing the person across the table. More often than not, you're playing the market. And winning a bet means more revenue and market share. Losing that bet means loss of resources, and in its worst case, a loss of the company. Before I move forward, just a quick thing that Seth Godin often likes to say is sometimes the game is just trying to stay in the game, right? It's important to know that when you make bets that are way too large, you have the opportunity to play yourself out, to blow up. It's critical that you make sure that the bets you make sense. And sense in the sense that they don't destroy your business. That aside, let's talk about the implicit and explicit that happens internally. Your product strategy is making bets, whether you list them or not. Things are happening within your product strategy, and it's going to launch other places and other teams to do things as well. You need to be talking to them. You need to talk to other teams. You need to talk to other stakeholders in order to understand what these implicit bets are based on the bets that you're making in your product strategy, and how to either bring them in to the product strategy so that you're clear-eyed about the things that not just your product team is doing, but everyone across the organization, or you need to get them out, right? So you need to tell them that, like, no, this is not what we're doing. We're doing this. You have to build trust as a product leader or founder with the folks around you so that you have the cachet, the political cachet, to make this happen. So that means you got to talk to people. You have to be very, very, very open with other teams and other stakeholders that exist so that these things go from implicit to explicit. Another thing about bets, right? If I ask you this question, will your next launch be successful? What are you going to tell me? Right? That tells me a lot about your product strategy. If you tell me that that next bet is, if that next launch is going to be successful or not, and there's no follow-up based on why that'll be successful, you're probably looking at a deterministic bet. And bets, unless they have to be, should not be deterministic. Good bets are usually probabilistic, right? There are things or modifiers or ideas that change the ability of success. It changes the chances of success. Annie Duke writes about this often, or does her work around this. Annie Duke is a former poker player who focuses on decision science. Christine Watke also does this work in her work with OKRs. OKRs are another version of bets within a product strategy. You can't have deterministic, right? It can't be yes or no. It has to be a bunch of, it has to be considerate of all the things that come into whatever that bet is. And oftentimes, it's not going to be a yes or no answer. It's going to be a bunch of modifiers that affect your bet. So use that as a heuristic. If it's not, if you see it as a deterministic thing, you need to probably go back to the drawing. These bets can also nest. When they're really good, they nest so that other teams can make bets that are based on your bet. Right? And it may add a level of complexity, but it also adds a level of alignment with the bets that you're making in your product strategy. Your teams become more empowered to make better decisions. And we'll talk about that a little more in the resource allocation space. But it's critical that, you know, if they're going to be bets that nest, they nest with the right bets you're making at a high level. And as a product leader and founder, the most important thing, I think, when it comes to your product strategy is your evangelization of that product strategy. Everybody has a life. Everybody is not focused on the same things you are focused on. In Wargames, that means I need to go around to each player if I am the commander of the team or the side, and I need to talk to them all. I need to make sure that they understand what our strategy is and I need to get their ideas and feedback on how they're going to execute it. And then I need to either adjust with the deltas that exist, and then we need to move forward. For your teams, that means you need to go out as a product leader and founder and talk about this stuff, simplify this stuff, bring people in, give them an idea of what's happening. And as you do that, you'll find people hopping on board and the bets being a lot easier to manage because people aren't making decisions that are totally outside of the range of your product strategy. That is drift, and drift is really bad because it will sap your resources and you will be out of luck unless you're very lucky with the dice. So let's remember, bets help you communicate what's important to the team. It's one thing I really want to harp on when I talk about bets here is that they aren't just a tool for you to speak about. They're also an internal tool for other teams and people to lean on. What's important? One of my favorite heuristics is to go pull 3 people randomly from any team and ask them, what is the hard problem we're working on? If they can't tell you, or if the answers are very different, then you're not evangelizing. You're not talking about the bets enough. You're not going out and your team has some implicit things going on. You need to bring them out. So again, in Wargaming, right, that's simulating this by getting people together and talking about what your plans on and keeping them aligned. Product strategies look like going to different stakeholders, going to different teams to build that trust and get the understanding that you need in order to keep them aligned with the bets that you're making. Talking to teams often about the bets they're making helps move more bets from the implicit to the explicit, right? We're drawing everything out so that we're making sure that we're all going in the same direction. Resource management. So in this picture here, I am on the side that's closest to you. And my job is to delay. So I don't have as many troops as the person across from me, as you can probably tell by this picture. But again, my job, right, is to delay. I'm understanding what my job is in the resources and how to leverage the resources that I'm given. A little dark for some folks, but it reminds me of Ho Chi Minh on the other side. Right? Ho Chi Minh beat the French and the Americans at their own game and freed Vietnam. And one of the quotes that he said was, if I lose 10 and you lose 4, you still lose. And that's a person that understands where his strengths are, what the effort will be needed, what the effort required will be, and also an understanding of the situation. He's at home. The people, his troops, believe in the mission far more than the other team, the other countries, and they're willing to do that. Again, resource management is not just about the team itself. It's not just about how many troops you have. It's an understanding of how you can use those troops to make a difference with the effort that you're putting forward. No different than product strategy. It's just resource allocation for us. And the truth of the matter is that our resources are very limited. Resource allocation is important to set priorities. Because they're limited, how you divvy up resources tells people a lot about what you're trying to accomplish. And putting too much effort into something or too little effort into something, it's just a waste of resources in there, because ultimately we only have one resource that is a constant, and that is time. Over-resourcing something wastes time because you have a bunch of resources just kind of sitting, and under-resourcing is a waste of time because you're not going to accomplish your goal. I think for me, one way I to help myself not over or under resource is to think of things in buckets. And I like to shout out John Cutler here because he's been talking about this wonderful 1 to 3 model that I'm really into right now. which is, it fits right into this bucket system that I have right here. For it, to him, right, it's 1 to 3 days, 1 to 3 weeks. In this case, it would be a tactical effort, right? It's smaller effort, it's weekly. We're here to solve a smaller problem that should nest into a strategic problem, right, which is more medium effort. This is something that takes months, maybe a quarter or two. It's a medium problem that nests into a larger problem, which is a cultural problem, right? This is a yearly effort. This is a year, 2-year effort. These are the big problems. And sometimes these are the big bets and, in fact, the big rules of the system that matter. See, all of it comes together. So, again, it's important to think about where you're putting the resources and how you're bucketing them behind the things that you're doing, because it's important in another way. Buckets allow for optionality. A lot of us talk about empowering the teams that are in front of us. It's a good thing to say, but that empowerment doesn't really happen unless people have the ability to change things on the fly. Do they have optionality? So when you set up these buckets of effort, and when you make good bets, and when you allow the rules to flow into your strategy, right, you are now creating guardrails for the people around to make decisions on their own that will not harm the overall objective. Because no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Right? Our strategies are not going to be important. And why that's really important for resource allocation is because we're going to need to have some way to adjust. We're going to need some way to pivot. And that's super important. Let's remember, resource allocation set up with buckets, you're free to frame and empower those people to make better decisions. In wargaming, this becomes questions like, where can I reinforce my attack? If you're on the strategic level, in product strategy, the question may be something as small as, what workshop can I do to improve alignment? Or, on the big level, it's like, how do we create this all hands to get everybody on the same page? Time is limited. So make it a point, make it real, and make these decisions. Product is constantly shifting. Right? Product is a constantly shifting environment. So when I leave the last section of resource allocation and talk about that in the sense of bets and rules, right? Ultimately, good product strategy allows people to have the freedom to operate and make decisions as they see fit within the context, your context as the product leader or the founder. Because, right, even your ideas or directions on high aren't as close to the people that are making these decisions every single hour on the ground. It's constantly shifting, and you need to give them guardrails to be able to make decisions without feeling like they're going to fail. And that's the important part. Let's as we do some parting shots here, good strategy is a way for us to stay consistent and keep our teams prepared for what comes our way. Again, product is constantly shifting. The world is constantly shifting. And when you have really good product strategy, it lowers decision fatigue, lowers the fear, it increases psychological safety. It makes people feel like they have the tools they need to make a change or make a good change. And even though it doesn't guarantee victory, it does help us grow a community, build links in both internally and externally, and build trust. Playing video games, playing war games, playing any type of game, right, helps us get better at this in the long term, especially if we're thinking about these lenses as we play them. So for me, the lesson is simple. Play games, get better long term. All right, so we're done here. If you want to play, there's this game called AAA. I love because it's Axis and Allies, but it has a lot of other things going on. You're able to play by email, and it's free, so message me by email, and I'll be happy to play along. It's a way for me to get out of my own head, and it's just fun. And we had a good time, right? Just again, I am Adam Thomas. We'll be talking in a second with Q&A. I'm the principal at Approaching One. And if you'd like to talk about product strategy, if you'd like to talk about getting your teams aligned with product strategy, if you'd like to talk about coaching so you understand how to leverage product strategy, feel free to send me an email at adam@theadamthomas.com. Come say hi. And visit me on the website. Once this talk is done, there'll be a wonderful, wonderful resource place where I'll have some books, some games. There'll be links to AAA. There'll be all types of things that you can use. Will be my initiative article, which is a soft plug for myself, but I think it's a great way on the team level, tactical level, to get people aligned with your strategic level and then ultimately your mission vision. All that'll be there. Come by, say hi, and yeah. Now we're off to questions, and I'll appear in real life.
Hi. Hello, everyone. How goes it? Nice to meet you all. Nice to talk to all of you. Thanks for hanging around for the Q&A portion of this conversation. And just to get us started, just to get us comfortable, I'd love to see everyone that's still here say something in the chat. Just say who you are and where you're from, just to get us started. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Diego. Appreciate that. Yeah, Matthew. Love it, love it, love it. It's a fantastic game. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Jen. All right. A lot of love from Denver. That's awesome, awesome, awesome. Great. So here's how I love to do Q&A before we get started. Let's see. Yeah, Brian, Warhammer's a great game. So much, it's so intricate, especially once you get to the tabletop version of it. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, Daniel, the correct link is AAAgame.org. That is correct. That's where you find it. Oh, yeah, those are fun too, Over the Wire and Code Wars. Great, great, great. All right, so I'd love to do a couple things, right? We have 20 minutes together. I love workshopping, and believe it or not, this is the first time I've given this talk. And yeah, so I'm very interested in a kind of a working session on how to make this better while answering your questions. So before we jump into Matt, I see your question, and I will get to that. That's an excellent question. I would love for you guys to, as we're chatting here, as you mull over the talk, I have what they call a dot voter board, which is basically a privatized board that allows you to share Post-it notes. And on this board, I would love for you to use it. And before we leave here, I would love for you to answer the question that's on the board, which is one thing. What do you think? What's one thing that would make this talk better? And then also, I'd love to send a dot voter board out for your just your general critique of the talk. What's something that you can? What's a question that you have based on this, or a comment from the talk. So if you're not comfortable with asking the question live and having this conversation here in the next 20 minutes, feel free to leverage this, or as we're talking, to ask these questions here so that I can use it to level up this talk in the future. Now, these are completely anonymous. And also, again, no one else in this talk, no one else here that is on that link can see this. So feel free to write into your heart's content and let me know kind of where you feel on the talk itself before we jump into some of these questions as they're lining up. Also, feel free to start lining up these questions with the Q&A function here, and we'll start working them down in just a minute after I pass you guys this link. Okay. All right, so that photo board links are there in here, and let's start with the questions that I have in the Q&A portion here. Brian, I see your question. Matthew, I see your question. We will get to them as well. So Diego asks, I am starting on the e-commerce space. What are some valuable questions you would ask a manufacturer in the development of the product? I'm curious, I mean, if this is kind of operationally, I mean, it's just the standard questions around how's the pricing? Is there samples that I can get to test? What are some of how successful are some of your similar clients that are living in this space or working in this space or working with you? Can I talk to other customers in your that have used you as a manufacturer in order to see if they would reference you or speak for you? Yeah, so I think if that's kind of what I'm not quite sure what the context is. Those are some general valuable questions I would start asking someone in the e-commerce space, especially kind of working on the other side of it, the services side. What I'd see. I'd also, just in general, oh, thank you, Diego. Yeah, so I mean, just in general with e-com and right, everything that I apply in the talk, right, think of those as things in the rules section. You need to really understand the world in which your e-commerce, the thing that you're trying to sell exists, right? If not just the manufacturer, but also the right, kind of where you're selling it, what are the services that help you sell, right? Pricing tools or emailing tools or marketing tools, trying to understand exactly what are some of the tools in the space, what do people use that are exciting, that'll help you accomplish that goal, and then also, right, kind of the ops stuff, the stuff that's around it. All right, so let's go with Matthew here. Matthew asks, so how do you incorporate different personalities into product development? I am a strategist. My partner is a tactician. I think the first thing is what you've already done, right? You've identified kind of where your strengths are with your partner. And I think in this context, tacticians will be really good at resource allocation, right? They've seen the war itself, kind of the war, right, that we're talking about. They've done the work around it. They understand how to move things from 0 to 1, and like they should be probably good around that resource allocation piece. As a strategist, you're probably stronger around the bets portion of the work, right? You probably can see a little bit long term, more forests than trees, and making bets, particularly small bets that align with that nature of yours, is extremely important in terms of how to make a partnership like that work. And of course, both of you need to know the rules of the game because everyone needs to know the rules of the game in order to help sharpen the lens in which you work in. Matt, I hope that was helpful. If you have any follow-up, please utilize the chat here and I'll ask the follow-up. I'll answer your follow-up. Brian writes, I'm sorry if this is a really basic question. First, there are no such things. I really appreciate any question, right? Right, that's a good sign for me. But to make sure I understand bets, do you consider your product objectives part of your bets? Yes, they should cascade from those objectives that you have right now, right? And inside of those bets, right, if you're looking at like an OKR structure, right, those bets should tie back to your product strategy, right, and the bets that you're making inside of that product strategy so that they align with your overall mission and vision as you move forward. I think a lot of companies don't do the work to tie those things together. And what ends up happening is you start creating a drift between the bets you're thinking about on the level of kind of the executive level, kind of middle leadership level, and the bets that the folks that do the day-to-day, your ICs may make. And that drift, right, it's exponential, right? The effect of that drift is exponential. It won't affect you in the short term, but if that drift exists long enough, right, as your company scales, then you're looking at a big problem, right? And that's when consultants and people, like an old version of myself, have to come in and try to fix what's happening to get your product development aligned. Brian, let me know if that was helpful. And yeah. Let's see. So Daniel here writes, any advice on how to determine what your nature is as far as tactician goes? Honestly, right, I always look at the work as an opportunity to observe how I am and how I engage and what I like and what I dislike. I think the best thing for anyone to do is to, start paying attention to yourself, a little self-awareness on what do you like? What do you find yourself naturally good at? What do people in your life tell you you're actually good at, right? And there are opportunities to ask mentors or people you've worked with before. Questions around like, am I a tactician? Am I a strategist? In a different way, right? Simply asking, what am I good at? Is an answer, right? It's a view, at least through the folks outside and around you. What's good, right? Or what's good with you, and how good you can be in any of these perspective roles. So, go with the work, and also go talk to the people around you. They'll give you some places to start in terms of how you think about yourself and how you position yourself with partners or teams. Daniel, let me know if that answered your question. And great. Thank you, Brian. The drift. I think that's one of the major things I've seen, when consulting around this stuff. It's just drift, right? Drift is the silent killer of a lot of products and product teams, especially if they have a leadership team that isn't quite sure how to connect those dots on a day-to-day basis. And then, all sorts of funniness. I'm sure all of us here have worked in a place where there's a lot of drift. We may not speak on it, right? We may not talk about it amongst kind of the leadership and in all hands, but you can like intuitively feel it, right? That disconnect between leadership and the folks that are doing the day-to-day. Like it's tension in the air to me. At this point in my career, like if I walk in a place, like within a day or two, I could feel like you could cut it with a knife, right? The tension between these teams, between kind of the folks on the ground and leadership. All right, we had two questions come in at the same time. One from an anonymous attendee. Hello. Hi, Sweet. Nice to connect. And one with Dave. So I'll start with Sweet here. Hi, Sweet from Console Forum. I'm currently doing MVP sales right now on a physical product in the console game industry. Fun, but can't grow with the MVP model without funding. With very limited resources, what is one thing you would have a person like me focus on? Sorry if this isn't what you're focused on. Well, I'd like to challenge you with against the MVP sales, saying that you can't go with MVP right now, right? All MVP means is a minimum viable product, right? And that can be something that isn't quite physical, right? I was talking with a mentor once about that famous, like, what's the MVP of a car? And right, like it's not a car itself, right? It can be just wheels and like a steering wheel and four tires, right? Like you don't have to worry about anything else, which is infinitely way cheaper to do than a full-blown car. So I think with very limited resources, I would investigate customers, right? Like, what's the smallest thing you can do to make a customer want to buy something from you, right? It can be a text game, right? Or it can be an online product, right? It can be, I mean, like, yeah, you could use Unity to put together something that is just a smaller version, right? That's way cheaper to produce, that is around your concept. And then, right, use that to talk to the folks in that industry, right? In this case, maybe Sony, Nintendo, whatever, right? You have something to show them that might allow them to partner with you or help you find that next step. Or, other game makers, right? Like if you show something and you can show that you have some customers that are interested, there's an opportunity there to go talk to the folks that are either funding or maybe they'll loan you resources, or maybe you could do something for them to help you move forward. So yeah, taking a look, again, shrinking down, what that MVP is, right? You just want to connect. In that case, it's like, in that case, it would be kind of characters or story or concept, right? Bring that down to where you don't have to deal with a physical piece of product and try to make it as small as you can. And then figure out, what makes people into the thing that you're trying to build. And then use that to leverage partnerships to move forward. Sweet, please let me know if that answered your question. And I will go to Dave's question here. And he says, do you have any examples around asking the probability of a successful launch in the B2B SaaS space? Yeah, so, I mean, it depends if who are you asking, right? If you're asking your product development team, or if you're asking your sales team, or, if you have a place where all these things are connected, right, even better. I think it goes to, you start asking questions around, customer engagement, the politics of the of the businesses internally, right? I think one of the things that B2B what makes B2B so different from B2C is the fact that you need to create or craft a landing spot for your product. So, I mean, asking her about, how the relationships are internally, what's your appetite for failure, at least with your internal allies. How's your relationship with the procurement team? How's the sales cycle going, right? Have you given them little things to chew on throughout the sales cycle that give them an idea of how your product works, right? How's the proof of concept going, right? Have we done a proof of concept? Maybe looking at proof of concepts with similar companies, right? How did that go, right? Success, fail. Let's take a look at how our companies have worked in that space. And, questions are like kind of down that line will start to create give you some idea, some confidence in how that launch will go as a person trying to launch something. So yeah, that's where I would take that to get an understanding of the probabilities of a successful launch. Dave, let me know if that was helpful. Oh yeah, Daniel, I don't play Dark Souls because it just destroys me. I don't know where my skill in video games went, but good Lord, Dark Souls is it is something else. Yeah, Brian, drift is such a silent killer. Medium to large companies, it is hard, especially as your company scales, right? That the drift, like it's easier to fall into that trap because these companies, as they are, become very different with the size of the company and the dynamics of that company change. And if you don't have, I think I heard Reid Hoffman talk about this once, right? You need to have the right people in place that understand how these companies shift as they scale in order to avoid that drift. Yeah, because, legendary book, what got you here won't get you there, pretty much. All right, so still looking for questions, right? I'm here. We got another minute. We can get one more in. Also, if you haven't yet, please hop on those 2 voter links and yeah, give me some feedback. Again, this is the first time giving this talk. I really want to make it better so that the next time you see it, you get a little bit more out of it, right? It gets better. So I'll wait a few minutes here for anything else. Oh, the links again. All right, Daniel, I will send those links right here. Let's see, there's one here. And there's one here. And also, let me send a link to AAA inside of the chat just so that we can all be on one accord here. Boom. Those are all 3. And I'll throw my own website in there. If I can spell, my apologies. Hold on, let me do this one more time. All right. And of course, my email is here. Please feel free to send me more questions, ideas. I look at everyone here as a partner because, again, this is the first time I'm giving this talk. Would love to hear your concepts and you talk more about this stuff, whether it's jumping in with Wargaming or just life in general. And, of course, if you want to look for a more professional relationship with me as a coach for you or someone else on your team, definitely fire an email. We can get an initial consultation started.
Awesome. Adam, thank you so much for your time. This was great. Everyone who attended, thank you also for your time. Really appreciate all of the engagement. We are going to have this session recorded with actually a little bit of a higher quality video on YouTube. So we'll make sure that gets to all of you if you want to share it with anyone else in your network. And again, thanks for attending, and everyone have a great rest of your afternoon.
Bye.